So thank you everybody for joining. We have a lot of questions and we'll zip through them because we don't have a ton of time. Lisa, I love that you're in Hawaii. It's just wonderful to have you there.
I was thinking just the same thing. I was like, oh, someone's in Hawaii today.
And
Well,
the waves just lull you into relaxation.
there you go. Well, Lisa, I'll start with you actually. We had someone asking about the study on low dose syringes and medication errors. I was wondering if you might be able to summarize the results on that and or maybe the outcome, what may have resulted from the.
Yes, without kind of getting into the specifics of the study, basically the outcome was, surprisingly, syringes that we were using before were never even studied for accuracy. And so once the low dose syringes were studied against like our current oral syringes, they're definitely not claiming they're 100% accurate, but they're reporting that it's within a reasonable accuracy compared to our current practice, which is why the low dose syringes were approved compared to when we did not have the low dose syringes. We just had like the 6 ml syringes. They were not able to get to the accuracy that we're currently getting right now, which is why those low dose syringes were created.
Got it. I hope that answers the question. If it doesn't, send us another, we'll see if we can address it. We had another, I'm going to just ask another quick NFIT question. Someone asks if you can recommend where to buy NFIT compatible cleaning brushes.
Great question. I'm going to look at that. I've never looked on Amazon. I always say Amazon, but I don't even know if that's true. I mean, we put them on our Enteral orders with our home medical equipment companies, and that's where our patients get them. While you're asking other questions, I'll just pop around and see where you can actually buy them.
Isn't there a protocol too with toothbrushes and how to clean with toothbrushes? And then it's I can't remember the name of the brush that's specific as N brush or
N-Clean.
N-Clean.
Yes, there is a toothbrush protocol. I will say, Mayo is very conservative, and we've chosen not to educate on using toothbrushes or kind of advocate for that, because if you actually read through that protocol, it's very specific into cleaning with a toothbrush. And so I totally understand why people need to. It's difficult to actually recommend that when it's hard to actually follow the protocol. But I'm going to look for the brushes.
Okay, thanks. And you could post it in chat, maybe.
Perfect.
Can I add something quick to that?
Sure.
So like she said, most like home care companies, I know for me, I specifically had to ask for the cleaning brushes, and then they were like, yep, we have them, but they didn't like automatically send them. And also like because of protocols and stuff, I don't know, but I also know of people that have had a lot of success with like baby bottle cleaning supplies that you can sterilize. So once again, I don't know if that's like, protocols that you have to follow, but for those that are looking for solutions to clean their syringes, I know people have had a lot of success with like the baby bottle cleaning supplies and brushes that you can sterilize.
Thanks, Nikki. That sound reasonable, Lisa. Sorry, taking a note here. We had a question I think was answered by a couple of the consumers answered, but this was one of the early questions. I know Joy mentioned it. Well, you talked about eating, but someone asked specifically about how do you feel about going to restaurants with friends and family without being able with a feeding tube? This person's still uncomfortable with it, and don't know if you have any tips, Joy or Hannah or Mickey.
Well, I can reiterate what I shared I was speeding through at the end because I was running out of time, but you might find especially now with the pandemic, there's outdoor seating. You maybe start with a friend that you really love and trust or a family member and go for like a faux coffee date or faux lunch. That's what I've done over the years. Initially, the first time it was really uncomfortable, but over time, you just get used to it. Maybe if you are NPO, obviously you're not going to get a glass of water or something to have with you. But you can occupy yourself with other things. If you're with a group, you can be the one taking the pictures and that kind of thing to engage without having to sit down and eat. So that's kind of how I've done it.
How do you make family and friends comfortable with it? I guess that's part of the issue. It's not necessarily
Yeah.
that she's
Yeah,
uncomfortable. But
well, I mean, telling them, at least for me, I've been pretty direct over the years. That's not my natural behavior, but just coming out and saying, you know, this isn't going to change. So if you want to spend time with me, it doesn't feel good being left at home. And, you know, I'd love to go with you. It doesn't bother me. So I hope it doesn't bother you. Because I will tell you, my husband, for about the first year, didn't want to eat at home in front of me. Felt really bad about it. And, you know, we just talked about it and I promised him it didn't bother me. And
If I can add something on that, you have to, a lot of the world is not going to change for us. And so we kind of have to normalize and make a space for us where we belong, and getting people used to the ideal that, even though we don't eat much or really eat at all or anything, we can still enjoy our life. And because we're Americans, we always celebrate with food. So we kind of feel left out. And you know what? It's okay. We can, still be the life of the party. Like, if you know how to crack some jokes, you can get the whole table rolling. I mean, just having a feeding tube does not stop your life. If anything, it gets to educate people about, this is the way I live my life, but it doesn't slow me down. And I think my mom wanted to add something on
Yeah,
that.
I just wanted to point out that if you can just put it upon your heart to make it the reason why you can live your life, not the reason you can't, because without it, you may be in a more dire situation.
Exactly.
And what it does is, if you'll change your mentality, that it allows you to live your life and really impactful, that you're being present makes a difference. And so
I remember I used to be super embarrassed of my pump, like to the point where I probably honestly have to get PTSD therapy for my pump going off, because, people used to bully me very severely, and brick walls shoved up into, and kids hiding under desks, because I used to live in Oklahoma for a tornado drill, and the teacher sat there and did nothing, and they all knew what it was, of course. And so, you can't stop living life. You kind of just have to catch people up with today's world, and, they'll eventually catch along. And otherwise, just kind of take it or leave it kind of thing. Because, even though we might not always feel comfortable in your skin, because I used to never like wearing, swimsuits or anything that showed my feeding tube. And I was like, well, dang, this sucks. It's like, why can't I just be like all the other kids? And I had to carry a backpack around when I was wearing a dress and stuff. And so you just kind of have to wing it, just kind of make it a part of you, kind of like accessorize it. I don't know. But yeah.
And if people ask questions, use an opportunity to educate. Look at the heart for why somebody's asking a question about your child or yourself. They're really not trying to offend you most of the time. People are curious, and
we're curious creatures. We're like Curious George.
They just want to know. And if you can do that, then it goes a long way.
Can I add one last thing to that?
absolutely.
So for me, what I've done is, like Joy said, kind of, talk to everybody and be like, eating in front of me doesn't bother me. And that, differs. Some people, it does bother them. But like for me personally, I don't mind having people eat around me. And so also, like Joy said in the beginning, people were like, oh, is it okay to eat around you? Like, if you can't, like, I don't want to make you feel bad. And so kind of, it's a learning curve. And eventually, it's a lot of communication and saying, no, I'm not bothered by that. And for me, I've turned like family dinners, and like Hannah said, like, we always celebrate with food. Until I had a trouble eating, I didn't realize how almost all social events, have food. Birthday parties, you have birthday cake, and family dinners, there's always food there. And so for me, I've made it more into a social event. If we go to dinner, I come in for the conversation. And so I don't feel left out. I just look at it more as, okay, this is a social time rather than like something that is centered around food. And, occasionally when I'm out in public at a restaurant, I think the hardest part for me originally was saying like, no, nothing for me, like not ordering something because, the servers come around, or you order at like a fast food restaurant where you order something yourself, it's not a big deal. But where like, servers come to the table and they're like, what would you like? And to say like, oh, nothing for me, like that was the hardest part for me. Because occasionally I would get people that'll be like, oh, you're not eating? And very rarely I've actually had people be like, oh, are you sure? Or like try to really like, like, oh, why? Like, are you sure? Like try to almost convince me to eat. I apologize for my dog in the background. And in that case, now I'm comfortable being like, yep, actually I have some stomach issues and can't eat. And that's all I say. And they just take that and they're like, yeah, absolutely. Just a few words. But in the beginning, if I'm with people, like my parents or whatever, if I'm not comfortable saying like, oh, whatever, they'll speak up and be like, yeah, actually, like, she has some stomach issues and can't eat. And just like that one sentence, it's kind of understood. They're like, oh, got it. Like, and then they don't really ask anything else. And so I know that helped me a lot with actually going out to restaurants in the beginning, was just having people around me, that we all kind of communicated and formed a plan. And it's just kind of a learning curve. And, it all depends on what you're personally comfortable with.
Something else I would add real quick is that I know we're talking about going out to restaurants, but if you're looking for ways to engage with friends who might not feel comfortable eating in front of you, propose a new activity. I can't tell you how many girlfriends I walk with in Atlanta. You'd think I would have walked circles around Atlanta by now, because many people know that I like to walk. And it's just another way to engage without having to go out to eat or having to go for drinks or having to go for coffee. So just come up, with whatever it is that you like. If you don't like to walk, or if you like to go shopping or whatever it is, find that thing you like to do that you can do socially with someone else. The other thing I will add is, if you can eat, but just need to do it in smaller portions or a special diet, Oley does have a card. Lisa, maybe you can talk about that card and tell people where to find it on the website.
I think it would be under resources. There's a tab for living better. And it says, I have a it's so that you can discreetly communicate with a server that you don't want to eat, that you have a digestive disorder and don't want to eat. And maybe Roz, if you're on the line, maybe you could post the link to that in the chat. That would be great.
I think it also says I need child-sized portions or smaller portions or something like that, just so that if the person, they have a policy, you can discreetly let them know without feeling embarrassed or whatever.
Right.
Those have been incredible. Just saying, like, for all of you guys, those have been absolutely incredible. Especially when I wasn't comfortable being like, oh, I don't want it. You just hand them a card and they read it. They're like, good.
Great. That's good to know, Mickey. Thanks. I'm glad that it's helpful.
And since we're talking about the card, there's also a bathroom card. I'm just thinking, if somebody only came today and as a resource, some stores, restaurants don't let you use bathroom. But if you have the card, you can give it to them. They may or may not honor it, but at least it's a way to discreetly share.
And Roz has posted those in the chat. There's a ton of discussion in the chat. So if you have chance to look at it, it's great. A lot of great ideas. Have you all always been, for Joy and Hannah and Mickey, and then I'll switch over to some of the other questions too, but have you always been comfortable with not being able to eat? Has it always been okay to sit down with somebody else who's eating, or did you go through a period of grieving, the loss of eating, or Mickey and Hannah, I don't remember your stories. Well, actually, Mickey, I know you were only on, you were diagnosed in your teens, so.
Yeah, so I grew up being able to eat pretty normally. I mean, I had some digestive issues my entire life, but it wasn't until I developed gastroparesis when I was 15, I believe. And at that point, like, I could eat some, but I couldn't eat meals. So it was, the smaller portions or different foods, softer foods, more liquids. And it just kind of like changed over time. And so for me at first, it was more, mealtimes were a little more awkward for me because my food was different than their food. And again, like, I was in school, I didn't go to school full time, but there were times where I was at lunch and, I would have, I remember everybody would be having their meals and I would bring like a little thing of animal crackers to snack on. And I always felt a little uncomfortable at that point just because, like I was worried, because of some other people's opinions,
Shoot.
like, oh, why are you?
Sorry.
No,
I'm sorry.
why are you only eating that? And then once I couldn't eat at all, really, it was kind of, I did have an adjustment period where it was harder for me to be around people. But I think kind of intertwined with that was also like nausea. Like sometimes when I'm more nauseous, the smell of food isn't quite what helps me. So that was kind of intertwined with that. But yeah, so I mean, now I'm fully all right with it. But it was kind of an adjustment period in the beginning.
Yeah, with mine, I just remember, growing up as a kid. So what's interesting about me is that I have gastroparesis, like chronic,
And
like
severe
severe.
at times. Yeah.
And so like I'm also volume sensitive and hypo and hyperglycemic. So my blood sugar used to range as low as 9 and over 600. So before I got my feeding tube, I used to have to eat every 2 hours. And so I just remember food always being painful and also still needing to eat. So I'd be like passed on the floor and like still not wanting to eat food. Be like a Paul Blart moment, just eat a sucker off the floor out of desperation. But yeah.
Yeah. It's funny though, we really tried, I think, as a family we worked to make her feel like she fit into the world, and the world is always trying to find a reason to isolate you, it seems
Or
like.
why you don't fit in.
But I felt like it was important really early on to try and educate those that were around her a lot. And so like, for instance, when she started school, we would have a moment where, I would talk to the teacher in advance and I would go in and we would do a show and tell. I let them she would show them her G-tube. She would show them, because everybody wants to know. Of course, they want to know, where does that tubing go?
What do all six-year-olds think in their brain? Like, what is this kid with tubes coming out? Is she like contagious or whatever? And
is she going to be okay?
It sounds offensive when you're new to the space, but if you don't educate, then you can't expect anyone to be held accountable for their lack of knowledge and stuff like that. It just it kind of makes it an unfair playing field, and even though it kind of stinks. I remember when I was 6 years old, I just got off the plane and I lifted up my shirt and I was like, you see this? This is my feeding tube. I was like, can we play now? And then, oh, yeah, sure. And they just went back to playing. And so, yeah, I just, just a little show and tell, just pop up the shirt and just leave.
Like, let's just get it out of, she goes, can we just get this over with? Because she could feel the eyes, she knew that everyone was looking at her. I'll never forget that. As a mom, I was really proud because I was like, you can either, and I think a lot of people, it's not that we don't have a right to be offended and you don't really owe them anything. Of course we don't. But the reality is most people are not trying to hurt your feelings. So if you walk through life with a chip on your shoulder and you're offended by every time something happens, you're going to be mad the rest of your life.
I've gotten some really bad stares, having a handicap sticker and there's like, you can't see the illness technically or whatever, because I'll have it like tucked away and, you always get funny looks, but it's kind of just like, I have a feeding tube, yada, 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 just walk on with your life kind of thing.
Yeah, when she was little, forget she got stopped, those things happen, and
on a daily.
Regularly. And, now she doesn't need that, but it's like, it's been interesting. So.
Thanks. Yeah, that's all good points. Joy, you wanted to.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is that I did go through, it was a very condensed period of time, but I did go through a mourning period because I had an acute onset. Like I was a normal 30 something, newlywed, like 2 years into our marriage. And then all of a sudden I woke up one day and everything changed. So I did go through like a very short term, like, life change experience where I did mourn the loss of food, but it was quick and I got over it. And then I just wanted to move on with my life because it was like, once I learned, okay, this is just how I have to eat. I don't know, it was like a flip switch to me. And it kind of coincided with getting a low profile feeding tube, becoming more active again, and just getting back to life. And I think for me, that was key.
So I know that we're not going to, Joan wants to make a comment, but before she does, I want to just say that I know we're not going to, we have 2 minutes left. So we're obviously not going to make it through all the questions. There are a lot of NFIT questions. There's a quick question for Penny about whether there's a resource for a committee petition or bill, and whether we should do a template where people can make comments. I think we'll try to get answers to those questions. I have put my email in the chat, and I'll do that again. We do not, I guess we know who, well, I'm going to put my email in the chat again. Feel free to ask questions, and we will do our best to get back to you with answers. I know that all the panelists would be happy to provide answers. And I also wanted to say that the discussion groups that are at 3:30 will address some of that. You can have some of these questions addressed. Somebody asked about swimming with a feeding tube. That would be an appropriate question to ask in Cynthia Reddick's group, for instance. And there's I don't know, Lisa, you probably can't join us, but Beth Lyman is leading a group about NFIT, where there'll be some questions and answers. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Joan. She had a comment.
Okay. I'm in my own session at the time that Beth is talking.
Well, there you go. Right. Lisa's going to talk about blenderized tube feeding, right?
And this was a great session, honestly. I just couldn't stay quiet because with my 37 years at Oley, I've been surrounded by some circumstances that are really worth sharing. And I think being determined to not miss out on social activities and interaction with others has to be in the forefront. We have a past president who shared a lot of information with us at conferences and other tube feeders. So we do have people that you can talk to if you happen to stumble onto people who are not quite there yet. I mean, one man is a skier. He said, "Oh, I don't have to stop and eat. My friends eat. I get more runs in." And then we sat down to dinner one night with two tube feeders who do not eat anything. And the waitress comes over and says, "Oh, could I take your order, please?" And one man says, "No, I ate yesterday." And then the next person, they go on, and the man sitting next, "Nope, I'm on a starvation diet." And these poor young girls are just looking at them. "Well, would you like a beverage?" "Nope, I don't drink either." Nope. So, there are ways. One man thinks, "I get more invitation to parties because I don't eat the food. I do dishes. I clean up. I do dishes." So, there are ways to break the ice and if you're comfortable. So most people will follow.
I want to add one really quick thing to that. I know we're running out of time. But as Joan said, to break the ice, my family and I, we have one restaurant in particular that we go to every time we get together as both sides of the family. And my grandma never fails to make this joke whenever a server asks "Oh, are you sure you don't want anything?" She'll be like, "Oh, she'll make a joke about, "Oh, we don't feed that one," or something along those lines that makes them go "What? Are you joking?" And then it makes everybody laugh and whatever.
They talk about this husband and wife. "Well, no, I ate yesterday. She's going to eat tonight." So I mean, it's just funny. It really is. It's funny.
Joan, before you wrap up the session, I just want to thank everybody. I'm really honored to have been part of this session. It was a great session, so many great panelists and such great information. Thank you all.
Yes, and absolutely, I echo that. So, and we go on, what? Am I muted? No.
Nope.
I'm there. Oh, okay. Yeah, so thank you very much, all the speakers, participants, and a big shout out to the attendees. Good questions, and we will get back and answer all the questions. So thank you so much. Thanks, Lisa. Great job.